talk about what a concept is. I think mind has memory, and we know this because things habituate. Even slime molds habituate, and they don't have a brain. They're just different nucleuses in a single continuous cell in some sense. But what is a concept? Given that even slime molds can learn, they can learn to prefer some foods and some chemicals and hate others. And in that sense, when two blobs of slime mold come together, they can share information. And there's, in that sense, then these qualities of mind or qualities of computation, also considering that AI without experience can also use concepts. Um, yeah, it implies that there's something that has a semantics for being part of a semantics already in some sense. And I want to say that then, given that concept use can happen without experience, or at least it can happen in occasions where experience isn't necessarily organized like a human brain, it means that mm, it is a kind of intuition that is intuitive both inside and outside of bodies, in terms of being able to be the case, such as language inquisition and the solving of the Gava guy problem by weight space aestheticism as one aspect. And then the other aspect is like the slime molds, the biological sense of things that the state space does in a vital capacity that relates to its own semantics in terms of doing something natively in terms of those semantics, and as having aspects of self representation in that, that then confers a sensibility to the nestedness of the semantics of somaticism within the semantics of ontology, where the latter is more primary than the former, as ontology comes first and somaticism is something that extends on top of that and has then concepts as something that can both precede Dasein, considering that in deep sleep and anesthesia, the cells do continue and they do, in some sense, still have, you know, processes that are basically intelligent insofar as the body is staying alive and managing entropy in that way. So it's not that, a brain dead person is entirely gone. Some of their aspects remain in their cells, like, for example, how the heart has a little brain, on top of it, a cluster of neurons that are much like the ones in your head. And in that sense, one can imagine as well that with transplants of organs, the occasion is that cells from the host will communicate with cells from the donor, and that these communications are much richer than saying that cells are tiny, dumb animals. They aren't just dumb animals, they are much better than human computers are in some sense, in terms of the density and kinds of things that they can do. But uh, yeah. What was my point again? Oh, I was going on about concepts because yet last night I was listening to Schelling, his transcendental work, not the one about history, the one before that. Anyways, it was he was talking about concepts and intuitions in a different capacity. And something that came to mind to me was that, in some sense, the application of an intuition as the body making the difference and seeing itself make the difference, but not appreciate, in some sense, the reification of the difference as a difference, implies that there is a kind of banal continuity of intelligence that does not doubly reify the aspects of itself as tokenings like words, concepts, points of standing still, in which the behavior is reflected in the image of itself, in some sense, as the picturing of the behavior, the naming of the behavior, and the attribution of its qualities in terms of other previous picturings and previous tokenings. Oh, and this relates to the first part in terms of saying that episodic memory is an extension that I want to let me phrase this carefully. Episodic memory has features of language before words, and this is such that the body as a whole has saturative experiences, and of course, there's a kind of segmenting of time and place and domain and context, and these are organized, just like how when you present stimuli to an animal, it has feelings about it differently for the snake than for the food. And so, presumably, the way those differences are entailed relies on the structural saturation of the body unto the effect of memory and its use, in which aspects of language are re exhibited in terms of sense making without the occasion of words. Therefore, when people say that animals don't have rationality, I would say, what do you mean, given that they have eyes and mind things and have intelligence in the world? It would mean that their rationality merely is not expressed in terms of arguments and axioms, but comes rather as the applied form of intuition. Whereas the conceptual work that people do at a higher level, in some sense, is the doubly reified and doubly punctuated causality that is noted in terms of morphism, which encodes states, and by morphism I mean sounds, scratches, pictures, anything that you can affect in the world that someone else can notice and take as a communication. In that sense, the use of memory from the body has similarities in ways that can entangle with the memories of other bodies through things which are socially consecrated to be associated with particular valences and images and picturings and concepts and holistic semantic constellations like Douglas Hofstadter symbols, the extent of neural tissue doing a particular job, so to say, in a continuity that is both internally as many, in terms of having many cells contributing to a holistic experience that has intelligence as one of its features that is not dependent wholly on experience or on experience at all, in terms of there being consistent things without consistent experiences, such as sleepwalking or talking in sleep, or while anesthetically dosed up, the cells otherwise continuing on in their basic capacity without holistic, processes more complicated that leads to complicated behaviors and stuff. But yeah, so what can we then take from this? I would say that language is an extrusion of a more basic capacity to work with elements in the world and remember them and organize them. And that this capacity, when it attaches to tokenings as dubbings this of that in terms of overdetermining aspects of the world to stand in for aspects that are ready to hand for mind as things that it knows and wants to communicate through these tokenings as the resembling through non-resemblance by means of the aspect outside of the condition of resembling having the reserve with which to situate particular resemblings for particular occasions without the occasion of morphic resemblance being entailed, as a case of non-isomorphic resembling that language does as a form of regular overdetermination that extends episodic memory from the basic facilities that cells have in ontology at large as the somaticism that is a working together of many parts in a grander whole.